Here we go. 813-727, the Bay Area. This your boy Mike Trigg. We got a special guest with me today, my first cousin.
I'm Cousin Toy.
Yeah, my co-host Baptiste had some unforeseen contingencies today, and Toy gladly stepped in to help us out.
Yes. I mean,
So how you been today?
I'm good. How are you?
Truly blessed. So I want you to go ahead and spearhead this thing.
Okay, so this podcast, or this episode is going to be a little different because, as he just said, that Miss Baptiste, is out doing what she's doing, and we wish her the best in all that she's doing. But this is going to be a conversation between family, but something that should radiate with all of you. And so I was thinking, as I was driving here, what could we possibly talk about that we usually talk about on a consistent basis with my public relations, media, marketing background, and with Mike Trigg being all things Mike Trigg. I thought we could talk about the characteristics of greatness, or what does it take for a parent to cultivate, build, and actually put forth into society that D1 athlete, that 5-star athlete, that athlete that has the ability to, demand top dime in their NIL. And we're going to switch it up, and we're going to talk about some current events and, the SEC and some of the boycotting. But, as the conversation flows, like we always talk, you'll get the opportunity to see, that happen and unfold up close and personal. But before we get into all of that I just stated, I wanted to frame this conversation by discussing what was and how what was is still present today, although we may not see it, but it's still relevant. What do I mean by that? When I think about who we are, meaning Black Americans, or as some on social media like to say, foundational Black Americans. When I think about our history, when I think about the things that we've had to overcome, the things that we've had to transcend and build from, and we talk about those in history, the Thurgood Marshalls, the Martin Luther Kings, what are some of the athletes from back in the day?
Muhammad Ali.
Muhammad Ali is
Jim
a great
Brown.
example. Jim Brown.
Bill Russell.
Mm-hmm.
Guys that stood for something.
Absolutely.
And in the face of everything. I remember Bill Russell played for the Boston Celtics, 11-time world champion. I think 6-time NBA MVP, and he had to go in the back door at restaurants. Because they won't allow blacks in the front.
Right.
I tell people all the time, if you ever watch the movie Ali, that was probably one of my favorite movies because everybody that was somebody in the 60s was in one room at one time.
Right.
You had Malcolm X, Red Fox, Sam Cooke, Jim Brown, Wilt Chamberlain, and Bill Russell was in the scene at one time, So
right.
Those guys right there, in those days, they understood the value of us. They knew we had to stick together.
Right.
And that's what they did.
There was not a difference between their athleticism and their civil and social responsibilities. Whereas right now, there's a change of the tide where we want our athletes to be athletes, but to not have a civil or social responsibility. Hence why a certain congresswoman told LeBron James, just dribble the ball and shut up,
Right.
So some of the characteristics that those particular young men or those particular idols that you spoke of earlier had, one thing we don't realize is that those young men were raised with responsibility.
Right.
Those young men were raised during a time where the village mentality was actually that. A lot of them came from very humble beginnings. Mm-hmm. They didn't have, but it was the community by which they were surrounded by that actually built them to be who they were.
Right.
They were expected to be men at the age of 12, and not because not because of this I guess, this passe ideology of what manhood was. No, everybody had a responsibility. Not only were you supposed to go to school and make your grades and be the best student you're supposed to be, but you had responsibility to your family, to your community. You may have had to be out in the field. You may have had to help your father, your mother at work. You may have had to be the pseudo parent at the time to help make sure the house was running correctly. I mean, they had responsibility, but with that responsibility came a attitude and
A grit.
Yeah, a grit, a excellence of of overcoming. You knew being black meant that you had it 10 times worse than your white counterparts, or maybe even your immigrant counterparts, right? And so knowing that you were coming in already at a negative, you had to work to make that negative a positive. So when I look at our young people today and I say, what are some of the characteristics of greatness? What are some of the things that parents need to bring with them when they see that talent, whether it be, athleticism, whether it be academics, no matter what it is, when you see your child's purpose early on, what are the things that you do as a parent to help cultivate that, to bring that to pass? So being someone with, let's see, how many, who out of 9 children, 6 or 7 of them were already athletes, right? 2 of them are in the NFL.
Right.
Okay. So just from your journey, your history, what you've seen, your trials and errors, because again, this is losses. This is no losses, just lessons.
Right.
And we're here to teach, right? So from your experience, what are some of the characteristics that you as a parent had to come forth with in order to ensure that your child was able to cinch that greatness?
So I talk about this all the time, and this probably sounds very redundant on this podcast, but Mike, I'm gonna speak on him in particular out of all my kids. But Mike ran a lap at 2 years old, so I ran with him at his pace. I just want to see how far he's gonna go. I stopped after the lap. We probably could have kept going, and right then I knew that he was different. Mm-hmm. So at 4 years old, I planned his life. Mm-hmm. And I just kind of put things in perspective, like the things that I knew. Yeah, I started push-ups, sit-ups, and he would do them if I would do them. Mm-hmm. I get out and do 10 push-ups, he'll do 10 push-ups, Mm-hmm. And it was just great. So then once he started playing sports.
Love you, brother.
I love you too, brother.
Okay.
When he started playing sports, and I saw that it translated to making him better. Mm-hmm. Gross motor development, we would start doing all kind of stuff to build that. And then we put the cones out, football drills, handing the ball off, teach them how to take the proper hand off, right hand, left hand, stuff like that. And it just took off. And the thing that, to answer your question, you have to have, the family has to be on one accord for it to really take off. Mm-hmm. I can name some families. I can name the Knoxes, the Goldens, and all these people, those 2 families, sets of family, their kids have reached the pinnacle of college sports. And the Knox draft picks, first round, 9th pick for the New York Knicks, Kevin Knox Jr., and his dad, they put a lot of work in, and Michelle's right there with Kevin doing her part. If you're from a 2-parent household and you got one person doing it, it won't work, because that mother role is just as important. Because you got to be a butthole, to be honest with you, as a father. It's pain to success. You know what I'm saying? I can remember, for Mike, when Mike started driving, or when he got probably say 9th grade, I would take him to all these parks where they had the toughest environment, where it get real confrontational and chippy, because that produces the best fruit.
I think what's not being said, but that I know and that is that, number one, you already had those things inside of your DNA.
Right.
So what you're basically talking about is the execution of what was already unseen.
Right.
And I think people need to understand that a lot of the things that we see came from an unseen place first. Meaning it came from the mind. It came from discussions with oneself. It came from planning. It came from dreaming. It came from the possibilities of what could. When our children, and I have 3 children, and he has 9. However, I know for a fact that children do what they see. They don't do what is said.
They're visual learners.
They're visual learners. And so for specifically little Mike, for little Mike to be exactly who he was supposed to be, he had to see himself in you first.
Right.
And so that is a lesson, right? As parents, if you want your child, again, the characteristics, if you want to cultivate greatness, from your children, you have to first embody the very thing, because children do what they see before they actually execute. So if you're someone, you can have a child that is completely gifted, that has everything he or she needs to take it to the next level. But if you yourself are an undisciplined person, where does that child learn discipline from?
No, he won't.
You know?
But and you're spot on with that too, Toy. I'm telling you no lie, because I played league basketball, and I would always bring Mike to my games, right? And so when you playing basketball, I can pass the ball with the best of them. And when I saw Mike game, I said, Mike, we know how to pass. I just watched you, Dad. You know, he was a little boy, and I'd take him to the gym, and I'd be on the court, I'd be going. And he said, Dad, let me get some sweat. Let me get some sweat. And I rub my head against his head, you know what I'm saying? And so it's spot on what you're saying. Kids are visual learners, and you're right. You have to, in discipline, you have to map it out, and you got to push them through the pain. Hey, we got to get up in the morning at 5 o'clock. I'll never forget it. Mike, in 9th grade, get up at 5 o'clock every morning, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, because he play on Friday. We rest on Thursday, ice bath on Thursday. But Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, he's going to get up. It's football season. We're going to lunch and squat on Monday and Wednesday from corner to corner, 3 times down and back. 60 squats when you get back to the driveway. Stretching, you know, then he'll take off running. Basketball season, we get up early in the morning, getting shots up. Number shots, dunking the ball 10 times on each side. You know what I'm saying? Discipline. It's hard for a kid, 9th grade, to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, then got to go to school, then got to practice after school, then you got to practice after practice. That's what requires to be the best. Let's go.
I'm a new parent, you know.
Yes, sir.
You did the basketball, the football, you just stuff the violent rink because you wanted to, or you went out of your way for your kid to do that, or you already did those on your own. That's all. Like, is this your schedule? Are you putting it in your schedule, or you taking out of your schedule to do things specifically for Mike? What do you do?
Everything was specifically for Mike. I said, do you want to be the best? He said, yes. I said, are you sure? He said, yes. Well, if you want to be the best, you got to do this, this, and this. Are you willing to do it? Let's go, Dad.
So what he did inevitably was he gave his son purpose.
Yeah.
So we're talking about characteristics. So first was discipline, right? Second was purpose. Without a purpose, you don't know what direction you're going into. You need that fuel. Some people use their financial situation as a reason to be great, meaning they grew up in poverty, they had lack, they saw their parents struggling, they saw their mom and dad go through hardships, and they said, I need to be what I need to be in order to alleviate my parent situation. If you look at Michael Jordan's mother, according to the movie and according to interviews, she went in and she negotiated that Nike deal to be what it was.
Right.
Unseen, unheard of.
Right.
He also understood, and she also understood, that this was the thing that would actually change the trajectory of not only her son's life, but the life of her entire family, in spite of all things. And so with that being said, I'm sure, based on what I've heard from different interviews with Michael Jordan's mom, you know, she would say that her kids, because he wasn't the only boy that they had, but they'll be out there playing basketball and doing the things, but it was something that Michael wanted above all else. He wanted to be the best. He had to be the best. He had to win at all costs. And so when you have that purpose within you, that's either self-fed or is fed by your parents or whatever, it has to produce something. Right? So when you mentioned the different families within the local families that you know, the Knoxes and the Goldens and that type of thing, and you see what they were willing to sacrifice to make sure their children had the opportunity to kind of leave it out on the field. How important is it, from your perspective, is environment? How important is it? How important is the environment of a young person?
It has to be conducive for growth, positive growth.
Right.
It has to. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm saying. That's why I always say that mom and dad, they have to plan it out together, and then you take it to the child and say, this is what we're going to do, and then everybody be on the court. If everybody on one accord, that child's going to go to the stars. You know, and if it's not, it's tough. You still make it, but it's just a tougher road.
Right. Right.
You know?
Especially when you have young black kids. You
Right,
know,
right.
environment is important, and so is advocacy.
Right.
Because for some reason, we believe that if our child is doing their part, meaning they're going to practice, they're getting, they're putting forth the effort to be the best at whatever it is that they're doing, that those surrounding them have their best interests at heart. And that is not the case. Just recently, when little Mike was, when he went undrafted,
Right.
the conversation for a lot of people, a lot of the news pundits, was an incident that happened at Baylor
Right.
Baylor University.
Right.
And so what was interesting to me, especially being a media person, was that when the conversation was had, it will begin and end in the middle of the story.
Right.
Like, rarely would someone ask his son the question of what happened, but rarely would the conversation go from the beginning of what took place to the end of a thing. But I want you to share with me the importance of teaching your child while they're advancing, growing, becoming, the importance of advocacy. Remember, in the beginning, I said that those earlier Hall of Famers and those earlier greats did not separate their civil duty from their athleticism. It went hand in hand. They understood that what was pretty much put upon them would be greater than anyone else who didn't look like them. So can you talk to me specifically about that situation and how your son advocated for himself, even when the narrative was changed?
Right. So I'm gonna just go in great detail about it. At Baylor, he was playing Arizona State, and Mike had a shoulder injury against SMU. And from that point on, he always wore a long sleeve shirt because he wanted to hide the brace. Because we have a brace, most people are gonna come at the brace at the shoulder. His shoulder hurt, you know what I'm saying? So he put a long sleeve shirt, and it was yellow, and the jersey was black, but it had yellow numbers on it. And the AD came out there and grabbed him. Hey, what the F you doing with this yellow shirt on? And so Mike removed his hand off of him, you know what I'm saying? Get your hands off me. And he walked off, you know what I'm saying? And then, so my wife and I are watching Mike warm up, and I'm just like, what's wrong with Mike? And then she looked down there, and then she said, because we know his body, we know everything about him. I don't know. So then Mike come to us before the game started, man, Dad, AD just came and grabbed my jersey, grabbed my shoulder pad, what's going on? What up? Want to do with the yellow shirt on? And I got his hands up off me, and I said, man, you know who you're talking to. Mike asked him, do you know who you're talking to? You know what I'm saying? And then he walked off, And I've always raised Mike to be a man and value your own opinion of yourself first and foremost, and know your worth. And don't let nobody talk to you. And me raising my son that way is probably the reason why he went undrafted. Because he was at Ole Miss, and there was some situations there that he had with Lane Kiffin. And I remember Mike saying,
Martin Luther Kiffin.
yeah, I remember Mike saying to them, hey man, I got a coach, I got a dad, I just need a coach. I have a dad. You know what I'm saying? Just call the plays, I'm gonna make the play. And a lot of times, man, when you have our pigmentation in those environments, that's not that. Do what I say, boy. Pretty much. That's what they're looking for. But when I tell everybody, when Mike went to Mississippi, the guys that recruit from Mississippi, they talk to white people different. Well, my son's always been a freeman. If that, you know what I'm saying? So I mean, like we raised him in the inner city environment, but he always went to private schools. He always had the best of the best. I raised him as if he was a pro athlete with incentives. He graduated National Honor Society, number one tight end in the country, number one dual sport guy in the country. So I gave him a lot, but he earned it. You know what I'm saying? Academically and athletically. So when you get to these schools like Mississippi, it's Ole Miss, and he has the hardship at Baylor, and Baylor's a good spot for Mike. But the AD, you know what I'm saying, he's more of a Mississippi mindset when it came to seeing a kid with a yellow shirt, and all you can see is this, look at this black kid, you know what I'm saying, bigger than life, and they want to oppress it.
Well, it's so again, going back to the characteristics, right? So I would have to say the third characteristic is advocacy.
Right.
It is so important to that parents understand that your purpose in raising your children is not to coddle them, but to prepare them for life. You have to teach your children and give them the scenarios in order to know how to act, right? How to respond to certain things. I know it's so easy a lot of times as parents, we say we don't want our kids to go through what we went through, so we try to shelter them. When we look really close at how we were raised, the things that we had to overcome are the very things that created character within us. Right. And so as parents, when you keep your kid from basically falling down, busting their behind on the floor, you literally rob them of the lesson that is meant for them to overcome. You speak about two-parent homes a lot, mom and dad being on point, and walking together in unity. But let's be honest, there are a lot of single parents out here. There are a lot of single mothers out here that have raised and have been there and been the support factor for their D1 5-star athlete. One athlete specifically that comes to my mind is Deion Sanders. Right. Deion Sanders literally said that his mother has never seen him play. Right. When he was coming up, she never, was able to get off of work to come see him play a game. But what was important for him was that he knew that he needed to do something extraordinary in order to change the life of his mother. Yeah. And that became his purpose. That became his foundation. That became his motivation to be prime time or to be this athlete, that we see today. So I don't want to deny the effects, right, of what happens from struggle, from that young man or that young woman that is able to see, that is watching and seeing their parent go in and out of work and having to struggle and having to sacrifice and using that as the fuel, right, to be great.
So my mom did it by herself, and I didn't make it into the pros. I got a couple shots. I had a shot with Tampa, Minnesota, and the Saints, and if I had continued to chase it, they say I probably could have made it. But I already had my kids, my two oldest boys. So I had to give them their time. But the hard work that I saw her do, it fueled me to highly educate myself and create this business and become a pillar of the community. So it's the same thing, it's just as an entrepreneur spirit. Mm-hmm. And so I can't say it any better. Toy, you're spot on. Mm-hmm. But we have a cousin. Mm-hmm. We have a cousin right now that embodies the Deion Sanders gene. Right. You know what I'm saying? As far as saying he see his mama pushing, sacrificing, and I see him working out, running with bricks. You know what I'm saying? I see him working with bricks, and I see his focus to change his outcome for his mama and his sister and his brother and his family and his nieces and nephews. So I mean, that's what it is.
What's so interesting about that, the cousin that he's talking about,
Kimani.
Carewood Day, Kimani. And this kid is extraordinary, not because he's 6'4", 14 years old.
270.
270. That's great. But he's extraordinary because of the lessons that his mom has taught him along the way. Now, Kimani has an older brother, and that trial and error, right, was done with the older brother. So by the time Kimani came about, his mom had a better idea of how to go about his career. No?
I disagree with that because if you go on Sean, my cousin Sean, she's our first cousin too. If you go on her Facebook, you'll see EJ, that's the older son, with John Gruden, Drew Brees. He gave him every opportunity to succeed, just like she's doing Kimani. You know what I'm saying?
I know that. I'm just saying she knew how to do it better. Like she knew how to put him in. That's all I'm saying. She cut her teeth with her oldest son. Why is this relevant? It's relevant because we're talking about at this moment the fact that even as a single parent, you still have a responsibility, right, to your child, to that child that is gifted. I would say most children, if not all children, have the capability. Whether or not they walk into that capability of greatness strongly depends on their environment, I would say the foundation of the parent, their village. There are so many different components that feed into that. I'm one of the first to say that you cannot sit up here and have a baby from a dud and expect Albert Einstein. You know what I'm saying? So who you procreate with plays a part,
Major
major part
Yeah.
in the outcome of the seed that you bring into this world.
Right.
But as a parent, when you realize and recognize that you have something in your hands, you have a responsibility to that child to do whatever is necessary to ensure that that child, wins, and not just in academics, not in sports, but at life.
Right.
The tools. There are so many young people who are very, very gifted, who could give some of our very best a run for their money, but they didn't have that person to push them, right? Push
Right.
them academically, to be there as a sounding board in order to make sure they don't make the wrong decisions. But they're very street smart.
Right. Right.
They're very common sense regulated,
Right.
but they just didn't have it on the other end. Our responsibilities as parents is to make sure our children have a balance.
Man, I want to speak on that for a minute. Man, I was so blessed last weekend to hang out with the Allens, Ladina and Moses Allen. Their son is going to Morehouse, Carrollwood Day grad. And man, so Ladina, the mother, she had a send-off for her son in Tampa Palms at a little country club out there. And the dad had one Sunday at Capitol Grill, International Plaza. And man, just to be in that room with the Edna Raines and his family and all these other kids that's going to Clark, West Point, Morehouse, FAMU, you know what I'm saying? They're winning at life. And the cousin, one of the older cousins said, this is what we do in this family. You know what I'm saying? So the grandmother was there, Moses' mom, Moses' fourth mom, the grandma, she was there, and she's the pillar. She's the head honcho of that family. So it was just a blessing to see them in that environment. And it was just a blessing, man. So I was asking Edna Raines' oldest daughter, what's her top 5 schools? And she told me, and I asked her, what you going to major in? And the explanation she gave me why she's majoring in that, I just said, man, it's just like looking at Moses, the fifth. I needed shades because she was just shining.
Right.
And that's what we got to do for our kids. And so I told the Edna Raines and the Moses Allen, them, that's the standard for our culture that we have to get back to.
So another characteristic of greatness would be intentional.
Yes.
Intentionality.
Right.
Nothing happens to a sleeper but a dream. Right?
Right.
Is that what they say?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So the intentionality behind whatever the purpose and the goal is just as important as the purpose and the goal.
Right.
Right? Because without the intention to do something, you will never do it.
Right.
Right? So what would you say would round out, and I know there's so many more characteristics of greatness that we could, build upon, but what would you say is probably the last but the most fundamental characteristic of building greatness in your child or in your children that resonates with you?
I think that believing in them, and when they know that you are with them, it's just like teaching school. Kids in the inner city, if you love them, they will run through a wall for you. So your belief in them intensifies their belief in themselves. They won't let you down.
So can we categorize that as saying emotional intelligence?
Emotional intelligence, emotional trust.
Having an emotional foundation?
Yes.
Being able to embrace a kid, especially a boy, when he's upset, crying.
So that's one thing about it.
Hurt.
Being vulnerable.
Right.
As a
Teaching
man,
that vulnerability, correct.
Being vulnerable with my son. You know what I'm saying? Like, we've cried. You know what I'm saying? And there's nothing wrong with that.
You're human. It's an emotion.
Right. So a lot of times, I can remember Mike being the age, probably like 14, 15, he was already growing and kind of be a big guy. We'd be in the gym, and he'd be on me like right here. And most guys be like, get your ass up, man, you're a man. I'm like, that's my son.
Right.
Nikki Holder, my best friend Ronnie's wife, she said, I just love you and my relationship. I see y'all in the gym, he be all on you, and you're cool with that. I said, that's my son.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
You give him the autonomy to be who he is at that moment.
Right, exactly.
I mean, and I think it's so important. I mean, in our culture specifically, and I think in a lot of other, ethnic cultures, manhood and strength is defined differently. And so for a lot of Black young men to show that vulnerability is somehow to be
Weakness.
weak.
Yeah.
When the weakness is not being able to show that vulnerability, because if you cannot express your emotion at the time something is happening with an understanding of why it's happening, that it's going to go somewhere. And a lot of times when it finally comes out, it comes out in the wrong time,
Right.
in the worst way, against someone that it should not, ever be
Right.
focused on.
Right.
So yeah, emotional intelligence, teaching your sons and your daughters emotional intelligence, I think is probably the cornerstone, if not one of the most hardest foundations you could actually
It's so funny you said that. So
build.
So I was talking to Mikhail, and this when he was at University of Georgia, and we was talking, and I was explaining it, you know what I'm saying, to him. I say emotional intelligence, and I was telling him. He said, where did you learn emotional intelligence from? Mm-hmm. I said, Barack Obama. That's where I learned it from.
Right.
I'm being honest with you. Seeing him go through what he did and always heard the question that was asked of him, and to him, he always gave an articulate, intelligent answer. Mm-hmm. A little sarcastic, but it was perfect. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And I learned that, man. So when people come for you, you ain't got to be belligerently, just breathe.
Right.
And answer the question to the best of your ability.
Right.
So Mikhail was, he was All-American, freshman All-American, got interviewed a lot. And I just say, breathe and just answer the question to the fact, because he shared that with his other dad. Mm-hmm. He was at the draft party, and he said, yeah, Mikhail was telling me, man, about emotional intelligence, and I never told his dad that I taught him that. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
We had a conversation about emotional intelligence.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I said, well, yeah. I kind of just chuckled to myself. I said, well, that's good. But that's one of the things, man, that, you got to have.
Right. And just to piggyback on that, especially when you know that your child has the ability to be on the nation stage in whatever capacity, it is so important, moms and dads, that you put your child in a position where they have to think on the spot. We call it extemporaneous speech.
Right.
But in order to build that quality within anyone, whether it's an adult or a young adult or a young person, you have to have conversations that ask questions with the expectation of responses. You have to have conversations that require the person who you're asking to think.
Right.
And it's important when someone asks you a question to do what you did when I asked you a question 2 questions ago. You stopped and you paused.
Right.
You didn't answer the question fast just to say something. You thought about what was being asked. And more importantly, it's also okay if you don't know. It's also okay to say, you know what, I don't know the answer to that, but give me a little bit and I'll get back with you.
Right. So Troy, everything that you're saying is spot on, right? But in the process of creating greatness, you got to dot your I's and cross your T's. Mock interviews every day.
Right.
From when Mike was sixth grade going to school. People don't understand. I'm going to tell you this real quick. I'm getting off the subject for a minute. I'm just going to veer to the right. So I started this business because my son wanted to go to breakfast every morning. Mm-hmm. Every morning, Mike would get up and say, Dad, can we go to get some breakfast? His mom and I was both teachers. We had to be to work. So I said, golly, man. So I was pulling my grill to the schools every time we had a function. And they said, this is the best barbecue in the city. And I had 5 teachers give me $1,000 and push me out. But if Mike would never said, I want some breakfast this morning, I would have never had to think, the weird thought to think that I got to do something to take this boy to breakfast every morning.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But that's the commitment to my son. So when we get in the car, we go into breakfast. Now here come the mock interviews. Mm-hmm. Hey, man, that's a great catch, Mike. 4th quarter, third set, third down, 4th quarter, 3rd down and 9. They called your number. You made a great catch. How you do it? You know what I'm saying? I put him. Then he said, well, my homeboy threw the ball. I just jumped in and caught it. So I said, hey, look, Mike. First of all, your homeboy got a name. You know what I'm saying? Or a number. You know what I'm saying? Or the coach called this play for me because we thought I had the advantage on the defensive back. You know what I'm saying? So we had to walk all the way through that. So this is no lie. His first interview came as a sophomore. He was playing in St. Pete the game before the Final Four. And Mike just went dumb in the fourth quarter. And he made a steal, made a rebound, key rebound, laid the ball up. And that's the same thing he said. My homeboy got the ball, I just laid it up. You know what I'm saying? And so I said, Mike, we had all those mock interviews. Yeah, Dad, but I wasn't expect to be interviewed this soon.
They caught me on guard.
Yeah. So then he understood the process, because Teddy Dupay was one of Mike's coaches, man. He's the all-time leading scorer in the state of Florida basketball, Florida Gator. I mean, he is the best, one of the best basketball coaches Mike's had. He had some great ones, Chris Ward, Teddy Dupay, and Kevin Knox, but him and Teddy had a great relationship, and Teddy spent a lot of time with Mike, telling him, hey, man, breathe, answer the question first. First thing you want to do, breathe, answer the question first.
Right.
And then go to elaboration, you know what I'm saying? So
we're going to give you a bonus characteristic. Preparation precedes manifestation.
Yes. Preach, sister.
One of the things that Mike would tell me, and I know this for a fact because I was always there. I tell him often that when I look at little Mike, I just think about the cousin that came to the door. Hey, cousin Toy. That, that's who I see. And to see this man, doing and really being the epitome of all of these preparatory steps and things. But one of the things that Mike did with his son that really, really set the tone for me was that little Mike had to do schoolwork during the summer.
Yeah.
There were no off days. Right. There was no time for idleness to take root in him in order for him to have another option outside of what the goal was. And the goal was what he said when he was a young boy. Do you want to be the best? Right. And the answer was yes. So we have to prepare you to be the best in order for you to manifest and to walk into that. Right. And so that is a bonus characteristic that in order for your child to see the end of that thing, you have to prepare them. And if you don't know how to do it, books, find somebody, reach out, all you need is one yes. You can have 100 no's, but if one person says yes and they agree to come on this tour with you in order to help cultivate your child, that's all you need. So
what Tori is really speaking on, so Tawans and I were both educators. So every year we'll go to Lakeshore school supply store and we would get books. So when Mike was in the 3rd grade, we'll get books for the 4th grade in the summer. So when he come into 4th grade, he'd be ahead. And we did that every year till he got to high school. So we was preparing him because what I didn't want was a great athlete that couldn't read or write.
We have so many of them.
That would struggle academically. You know what I'm saying? So we prepared Mike, man. So when he came out, he can take the SAT, ACT, make a good score. He can read and write, dictate on paper. You know what I'm saying? So it's a lot going to making the whole child.
And it's things that you can put your hand on.
Right.
Reading is everything. Right. Reading helps to expand really expand a person's vocabulary. Reading helps one to think. Especially history. I love history. I feel like if you don't know where you've been, you can never say where you're going because you don't know where you've been. And I think, and I personally believe, one of the reasons we're in the situation we're in right now with a lot of our young people is because they don't know their history. Right, exactly. They don't know who came before them. They don't know the greats that are doing the exact same thing that they're doing, whether it's tennis, whether it's soccer, whether it's football, basketball, whether it's robotics. You need to find out who looked like you, who did it before you, what they had to overcome, what they had to supersede and just the hurdles that they had to jump over and learn about them. Model your path based on their path as best as you possibly can.
I can remember grandma right down
The
the street.
best grandmama, as a matter of
1615 North Cuba. I told you, you was a little. I don't think you was there then. You were so young. But she would sit us down in the summer. All my cousins would come in, and she'd put on the movie Roots. You know what I'm saying? Just basically just saying to know where we come from, the history of us in the United States.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, and I think that that's the problem today. Integration wasn't the best thing for us.
No.
You know what I'm saying? It was a setup. But I think it could have worked had we just still stuck to our guns and patronized us.
Right.
That's the only way.
Right.
You know, still save your money, still do this right here, still just, you know, yeah, we got a voice now, we got a vote, okay, but we still know that we're gonna do this right here. And I don't understand for the life of me how we got tricked after seeing the harmful things that they did to us. How could we ever want a place at their table at that time? You understand that?
Yeah. Well, I think about that often, and that very thing, and I don't know if it's a matter of being tricked or if it was more of a trickle. And what I mean by that is, before, when black people became affluent, when you had affluent black people,
Right.
they were affluent because black people patronized.
Right.
Black people built. Black people, our dollars stayed in our community,
Four
four or five
leaving
times more before it
Right.
ever left our community.
Right.
So we built our own black wealth.
Right.
And so during desegregation, there was a trickling of, oh my gosh, now I have access to what I thought was better, right? White communities,
Golly.
Yeah,
Yeah, that. You said you can
Yeah.
stop. You can stop it. I got it.
Yeah.
I just
So-
hit me right in the face like a punch.
Right. So it really, what it did was, it was always a divide there
Right.
between the have and have-nots. Even within our community, there
Right.
was a divide there.
Right.
But when the haves saw themselves being integrated
Right.
on the other side, it caused a greater divide, because now your children don't have that same vision that we once had, right? Because if everything is black, if everybody, you know what I'm saying, if you live in black, sleep in black, you play black, if everything is black and you have a clear understanding of who you are and who they are,
Right.
once you start that integration, right?
Thank you.
It becomes a conversation of, I am good enough, and see, I'm here with you.
Right.
But
okay, I feel that, and
Yeah.
I can see where you're going with it, but I just still think that wasn't the case in Tulsa, Oklahoma,
No, well, this is the thing. When people talk about Tulsa, Oklahoma,
Rosewood.
and
Durham.
Rosewood, but specifically, and we can touch on this before we transition into the SEC.
Right.
But when people talk about Tulsa, Oklahoma, they always talk about the opposition burning down this affluent black town, right? Because you have to also think, come on, Tulsa, Oklahoma was called Black Wall Street, and there were several Black Wall Streets throughout the country.
Yeah.
But in 1821, Tulsa, Oklahoma was Black Wall Street. Well, it grew to be that. Right. So if you have to think about it, so if you didn't want black folks to succeed, right? Why wait till it became this mecca?
Right.
Why not just burn it down when they start? You know what I'm saying? Why not terrorize? And it was on Green Street.
Right.
Green Street was the main street. So it was a Green Street in Mississippi. It was a Green Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Right.
Okay. So the idea was not so much that, black people were in this position and they were excelling, and all of a sudden the opposition was upset about it.
Right.
What became a fight that the government had to get involved in was the fact that these black men who was fighting in World War I came back with some strategy, came back with some skills. And before, there was a time where if someone black was accused of something, then, there were somebody on the other side that will get together some other folks, and they would get together a white mob, and this white mob would go to the jail, and they would say, "Give us that boy."
Right.
And they would hand over the boy.
Right.
And next thing you know, it was some strange fruit hanging from trees. Right. But this time around, when they said, "Give us that boy," the black men in that community said, "Over our dead bodies."
Right.
Right. And so those black men who fought in World War I for our ability to have freedom, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, said, "I tell you what, we're going to get our guns, we're going to get together, whatever, and we're going to protect this situation because he deserves his just due in court."
Right.
And so it was the standing up that was the audacity.
Right.
And it wasn't that black people didn't stand up, but it was the sheer numbers, that it was the strategy that.
Right.
And what's never discussed about that situation situation. It wasn't so much that, oh my gosh, those black people were getting tore out of the frame or getting.
we were winning.
No, we were winning.
Right.
And
That's when
so,
they dropped the bomb.
and that's when they dropped the bombs.
Wow.
If the and it wasn't so much, oh, okay, well, somebody did. No, that was the government.
Right.
The government did. So had the government never dropped bombs, do we believe that we'd be having the conversation we're having right now?
No, we don't.
Absolutely not.
Right,
How
right.
do you fight against a bomb?
Right.
From airplanes.
Right.
You
Right.
see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then it was a further insult, right? So now you have desolated what we have come to know, that the town that we've built.
Right.
Now we're going in because we need to rebuild. My stuff was destroyed.
All insurance papers,
Right,
everything.
all my
Yeah.
insurance papers,
yeah.
my ability to get the money out of the account, out of my bank accounts and things of that nature. I have no way to prove who I am and what it is that I own.
Right.
So because I can't prove it, now you can take it from me and never have to
Pay me for it. Yeah.
So so there was a double standard
Right.
there. There was a trifecta going on of just absolute destruction and so when we talk about Tulsa, Oklahoma specifically, because that comes up a lot, knowing that there were so many other places.
Right.
We didn't have justice.
Right.
Those that were meant to uphold justice according to the Constitution did not uphold justice. They upholded the justice that their cards, which affiliated them with certain organizations, because you had to be a part of the organization to be a police officer or a sheriff, right? Mm-hmm. So based on the mission, based on the principles, based on the Constitution of their organization, that's what they value more than the Constitution of the United States of America.
Wow.
So when you look at something like that from that perspective, you kind of understand it more.
Yeah,
Not you're right. Not that we were defeated, not that we were whatever. No, you're talking about a city of black people standing up for their rights against an entire country.
Yeah.
There was no way to win that.
Right.
So that's a great segue into what's currently going on right now with the 1965 Voting Rights Act, which is being gutted, and we have seen it unfold firsthand within the state of Tennessee, specifically with Memphis. And just to kind of recap, in case you are unaware, and I'm paraphrasing, Memphis was a Democratic city. It was a Democratic stronghold. And so when the 1965 Voters Act was repealed by the Supreme Court, what they did was they took Memphis and they divided Memphis up to be absorbed in rural areas. And those rural areas are predominantly Republican. So when you divide a Democratic stronghold up to be absorbed by rural counties or whatever, I think counties or areas, you weaken the Democratic vote and the black representation. Now, the Constitution said taxation without representation is against the Constitution. It's against the law, right? Well, that I know that. It's not what's being done. So as a result of what's been going on with the 1965, the repealing of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, the NAACP, the CDC,
Urban League, Black Caucus,
you name it, all the black trifecta. The Black Who's Who organizations are asking athletes, D1 5-star athletes or athletes that have the ability to play for a
Alabama, Georgia,
a top
LSU,
school
in the SEC.
in the SEC to not go to the schools in the SEC, but in turn to take their talents to HBCUs
or
colleges in other places, California, New York, New Jersey.
More liberal schools.
Right, more liberal schools, more liberal states.
Right.
And I want to put this in right here. You know what happened in South Carolina?
Yeah, Don Staley.
With Don Stately.
Yeah, they said Don Staley, the quarterback. Really, it was just Don Staley.
It was just Don.
Yeah, because
So
the
Don
quarterback,
said
they would have got another quarterback anyway. But
Right.
Don Staley,
Don said, if this gutting of the districts goes through, I will leave North Carolina State.
South Carolina State. South Carolina University.
Okay, that.
Yeah. Right.
She said, but if it goes through, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
And it did not go through.
Yeah, because Don can pick up and take her players with her.
Yes.
And she'll get a job just like that.
Right.
And there'd be a particular powerhouse wherever she goes, because she has the blueprint. But when I think about that, when they ask these kids that come from single parent households not to go to SEC schools and turn down some millions, $500,000, you know what I'm saying? $250,000 at least.
Right.
I think they're crazy, to
Right.
be honest with you, because like I said, you know, the CDC, Black Caucus, Urban League, you know, what do we have in place for these kids?
Right.
You know, and if you go to a black college or a university, you're not gonna get the same NIL. I would say that we need to come together and kind of teach these kids, no, you do need to go to the SEC schools and understand what is happening. They're using you, so you got to use them, get your resources, bring them back to the community, and build a community up.
Right.
That would be my suggestion.
Right.
Don't go to the SEC and think that you arrived.
Right. Because you have not.
Understand what this is.
Mm-hmm.
Take that money and come back and do something in your community that can be that has some substance, that can sustain some people.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And if you do that, we'll be winning.
Right. I think it's very disingenuous
Right.
for an organization of intellectual elites.
Right.
Let's call it that. I think it's very disingenuous for an organization of intellectual elites to ask, like you said, a young person who may come from very adverse upbringing, backgrounds, to not want to be in a position where they're willing to pay them $250,000 for their talents.
Right.
I think it needs to also be said that when these colleges, because not everybody's getting the same NIL deal.
No.
That needs to be said as well.
Right.
So,
but just the elite going to get at least $250,000.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct.
go ahead.
Now, for the elite to say, you know what, I'm not going to go to a Georgia. I'm going to go to a FAMU, or I'm going to go to not even FAMU, a Lincoln, or a Morehouse, or
Right.
to a HBCU.
Right.
Then that requires that the HBCUs step their game up to be able to accommodate these athletes. Because right now the program, the SWAC program is not where it needs to be to really showcase these young people to go to the next level. I'm just gonna say it like it is. You have some really good athletes, right? Really good athletes that play in the SWAC. But we saw when Deion Sanders with Jackson State had his son and some other players and was able to recruit these young men because he was more of a father figure, a leader, and that type of thing.
Right.
How the SWAC became, they were dominating.
Yeah, so Jackson State, with Deion Sanders' effect into the SWAC, they was on TV every week.
Right.
And he brought a lot of revenue.
They were a contender.
He brought revenue into the SWAC.
Right.
Do you know the SWAC as a whole hated Deion?
Correct.
You know what I'm saying? So
it's going to require a hardcore conversation.
Right.
Absolute hardcore conversation.
But the thing about it is they don't have the resources
No.
to give NILs like that. So
medical.
it's a lot. But they're not necessarily saying
go to HBCU.
Yeah,
Correct.
they're saying go try USC.
Right.
Try Oregon. You know what I'm saying? More schools like that. And I get it. I just think that, no, don't teach them that. You got to face adverse situations.
Well, I'm going to go.
I don't believe in running from adverse situations. And I think when you tell a kid, no, you go there, you ain't got to take a stand. And that way, take that money.
Take a stand another way.
Yeah, take that money
Right.
and let it benefit the culture. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So,
I think people need to understand that when a college is able to offer a child $250,000, $500,000, $300,000, do you not understand how much money that college is making off of you know what I'm saying? They're paying for something.
yeah, so
You know.
LSU football roster is $43 million.
My God.
Texas is 44.
Right.
Ohio State is 42.
And what they will get in return will double, triple that.
Without a doubt. When you win a national championship, it brings billions to the school.
Correct.
So into
Right.
into that conference too.
Right.
Because they split it up in the conference. Everybody get a portion of it.
Right.
Only person that don't have to do that is Notre Dame because they're not in the conference.
Right. And it becomes a banner.
Right.
It becomes a banner for other young people to say, hey, I want to go to that school because
Right.
they're a winning school.
Right.
They have a winning program.
Right.
I want to be taught by that coach. I want to, I want to have that experience. I want to wear that number. I want to wear those colors. This also goes hand in hand with that whole dreaming concept, right?
Right.
Of the characteristics that we were talking about.
Right.
I told my children to dream so big that it scares them.
Right.
Right? Because, and why is that? Because as you start to accomplish the dream, if you don't dream big enough, once you get there, you'll be like, okay, well, that wasn't anything. When
Right.
you dream big, when you dream so big about who you see yourself being to the point where it scares you, every step towards that dream is an accomplishment.
So I'm gonna piggyback on you. I'm taking put a quarter of the meter. Ventel Bryant, right there, jersey number 1. All-time leading receiver at Temple. Played for the Dallas Cowboys. He said when he made it to the pros, he stopped dreaming.
Wow.
He stopped dreaming,
Wow.
and he wasn't there. He's probably played like 3 years.
Wow.
But if he probably continued to dream,
Right.
you know what I'm saying?
Right.
He told that to Mike.
Right.
And so what we hitting on is, man, it's just A1 stuff.
Yeah.
So the thing about this right here, this podcast, when you hear it, please share it with your athletes, share it with your wives, man, because I did a lot with Mike, man, but I really think Tawanza, to be honest with you, man, because that's my wife, and she allowed me to raise that boy the way I saw fit. It was tough. It was extremely tough some mornings to sit by and watch the stuff we had to do. Because when you're a child, you don't want to go every day. You know what I'm saying? But once we get going, we're going. And for her to, when I'm not there, shit, hey man, do what we doing it for. Do what we doing it for.
Well, I think you owe her a thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tawanza.
I got you, sis.
Charlie's, I'll take you to Charlie's. Let me know, you know what I'm saying?
But
How you doing?
but I think it's so. I mean, you.
Hey, how y'all doing?
Good.
How you doing, young lady? What's up, Renee?
Hey, Renee. But saying that is so important, right?
Right.
Because when you have an opportunity, you have this goes, I'm speaking from a woman's perspective, ladies. When you have a man in your child's life, whether that is their father, your father, their uncle, family friend, someone who is
Your significant other.
Your significant other, your special friend, as they put in the obituary.
Yeah.
But when you have a healthy man in your child's life, and you know that person means your child good, trust the process. You're not going to always agree with it, and you need to voice that. Hey, I don't understand. Can we come up with a compromise? But trust the process, because it's that process that will build character in your child, and that they will take with them moving forward.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's all I got. Ain't got no more.
That's all I got. I ain't got no more. This your boy Mike Trigg.
It's Cousin Toy.
No losses, just lessons.
All right.
Saba, can't wait for you to get back, baby. Yo.
Yes, ma'am. It's been fun.
All right.